The document shouldn't have been there, Sergeant Thomas. Reed had been cleaning the private study at Clarence House for security sweeps twice a week for 3 years. He knew every bookshelf, every drawer, every corner. He knew what belonged and what didn't. This folder didn't belong. It sat on the mahogany desk, partially hidden under a newspaper. Unmarked, plain brown. The kind of folder people used when they didn't want attention? Thomas should have walked past it. Should have pretended he didn't see it. His job was security, not snooping. But something made him stop. The study belonged to Tom Parker Bowles, Camilla's son, a food writer and critic, harmless by all accounts. Pleasant when Thomas saw him, never caused problems, so why did Thomas feel a knot forming in his stomach? He glanced at the door. Empty hallway. No footsteps. No voices. He shouldn't look. Every instinct, every bit of training, told him to walk away, but his hand reached for the folder. Anyway, inside were photographs, documents, meeting notes, all marked private and confidential. Thomas's blood ran cold as he read the first page. If you're watching this story unfold, you won't believe where it goes. Hit subscribe now so you don't miss what happens next. The document was titled Transition Strategy, Preparing for the New Era. That alone wouldn't have been alarming. Transition planning was normal for the monarchy. William would be king someday. Preparation was expected. But the next line made Thomas's hands shake. Phase 1. Diminish public confidence in Prince William's leadership capabilities. Thomas flipped through the pages. His heart pounded harder with each one. There were media contacts, lists of journalists known to be critical of William, talking points about his lack of preparation and emotional instability, suggested storylines about Kate's influence over him, questions about his judgment. But worst of all were the photographs. Pictures of William at private moments, looking tired, frustrated, angry, all taken from angles that made him look weak or unstable. Someone had been documenting William's worst moments, building a file to use against him. Thomas heard footsteps in the hallway. He closed the folder quickly and placed it back exactly as he'd found it. His pulse thundered in his ears. Tom Parker Bowles walked in, carrying a coffee cup. He saw Thomas and smiled pleasantly. Sergeant Reed. Just doing your rounds? Yes, sir. Standard security check. Thomas's voice sounded normal, calm. Years of training kicked in. Excellent. Can't be too careful these days. Tom set his coffee down and moved toward the desk. Thomas watched him. Really looked at him. Tom was in his late 40s. Friendly face. Casual clothes. He looked like someone's favorite uncle. Not like someone plotting against the future king. But the folder was right there. Right under Tom's hand now. Everything all right, Sergeant? Tom asked, noticing Thomas's stare. Yes, sir. Just finishing up. Thomas moved toward the door. Good man. Have a pleasant evening. Thomas left the study, his mind racing. He walked down the corridor on autopilot, his thoughts spinning. What had he just seen? Was it real? Could Tom Parker Bowles really be trying to undermine William? And if so, why? Tom had never shown interest in royal politics. He'd built his own career. His own identity separate from his mother's position. He didn't need palace power. Unless someone else did. Thomas stopped walking. A horrible thought crystallized in his mind. Tom might not be working alone. He might not even be the one in charge. What if this went higher? What if Camilla knew? The thought seemed impossible. Camilla was queen consort. She'd spent decades fighting for respectability. Why would she risk everything to undermine her stepson? Unless she believed her own son deserved more influence, more power, more recognition. Thomas thought about the documents again. The careful planning, the media contacts, the photographs taken over months, maybe years. This wasn't a sudden scheme. This was long-term, methodical, professional. Someone with resources had orchestrated this. Someone with access to the palace. Someone who understood how public perception worked. Thomas reached his supervisor's office and stopped outside the door. His hand hovered over the handle. He should report this immediately. That was protocol. But report what, exactly? That he'd looked through private documents that weren't addressed to him? That he'd violated Tom Parker Bowles' privacy based on a suspicion? He had no proof. Just a folder full of papers that could have innocent explanations. Transition planning happened all the time. Maybe it was legitimate research. Maybe Tom was writing an article. But Thomas knew better. Those photographs weren't journalistic research. That language wasn't academic. This was a plot. He was certain. The question was what to do about it. If he reported it and was wrong, his career was over. If he reported it and was right, but couldn't prove it, his career was still over. But if he stayed silent and did nothing, William could be in real danger. Not physical danger, but political danger. The kind that could damage his future as king before he even got the crown. Thomas lowered his hand from the door. He couldn't report this. Not yet. Not without more evidence. He needed to know more. Needed to understand who else was involved. Needed proof that would stand up to scrutiny. Which meant he needed to investigate. Quietly, carefully. He needed to become something he'd never been before. A spy inside the palace walls? Thomas walked away from his supervisor's office, his decision made. He would watch Tom Parker Bowles. He would document everything. He would find the truth. And if that truth led to Camilla herself, so be it. The game had begun, though Tom didn't know it yet, but Thomas did. And he wasn't going to let Prince William be destroyed by people who smiled to his face while sharpening knives behind his back. He thought about William, the prince who'd lost his mother too young, who'd grown up under brutal scrutiny, who'd built a life and family despite everything. William deserved better than this. Deserved loyalty. Deserved protection. And Thomas was going to give it to him, no matter what it cost. The folder in Tom's study was just the beginning. Thomas was certain of that now. The question was, how deep did this conspiracy go? And who else was involved? Thomas was about to find out. Asterisk, asterisk, the next 3 days were the longest of Thomas's life. He continued his normal duties. Security sweeps, patrols, reports. But his mind was always on that folder. He needed to see it again. Needed to photograph the documents. But Tom's study was occupied constantly now. Almost as if Tom knew someone had been looking. On the 4th day, Thomas's opportunity came. Tom had a lunch meeting in London. Thomas confirmed it through the security schedule. The study would be empty for at least 2 hours. He waited until the house settled into its midday rhythm. Staff on lunch breaks. Minimal foot traffic. Perfect timing. Thomas entered the study with his security scanner. Standard equipment. Nothing suspicious. If anyone asked, he was doing routine electronic sweeps, but hidden in his jacket was his phone. Camera ready. He moved to the desk. The folder was gone. Thomas's heart sank. Had Tom moved it? Destroyed it? Had someone warned him? He searched the desk drawers carefully. Nothing. The bookshelves. Nothing. The filing. Cabinets locked. Thomas was about to give up when he noticed something. A book on the shelf was positioned differently than before. Slightly out of alignment, he pulled it. Behind it was a small safe built into the wall. Thomas stared at it. He was good with security systems. Had been trained in breaking them. But opening this safe would be crossing a serious line. If he got caught, he wouldn't just lose his job. He could face criminal charges. But if he didn't look, William could face something worse. Thomas took out his tools. His hands were steady despite his racing heart. 3 minutes later, the safe clicked open. The folder was inside. Along with 2 others just like it, Thomas pulled out his phone and started photographing. Every page, every document, every photograph. His hands moved quickly, but carefully. The second folder contained financial records. Payments to various media consultants and PR firms. Amounts in the hundreds of thousands of pounds. All coded with initials instead of names. But one entry made Thomas freeze. Payment to CB Strategic Consultation, £250,000. CB Camilla Bowles. Or was it just a coincidence? Thomas kept photographing. The third folder was worse than the first two combined. It contained a detailed timeline. Operation New Foundation, it was called. The name alone made Thomas's stomach turn. Phase 1 had already begun. Subtle media placements questioning William's readiness. Anonymous sources expressing concerns about his temperament. Stories about disagreements between William and his father. Phase 2 was scheduled for next month. More aggressive media pushes. Coordinated stories across multiple outlets. All timed to coincide with William's upcoming tour of Africa. Phase 3 was the endgame. Details were vague, but the goal was clear. Establish alternative center of influence within royal family. Redirect public focus to more stable leadership. Alternative center of influence. What did that mean? Thomas photographed the last pages and closed the safe. He returned everything to its exact position. The book went back on the shelf. He was sweeping the room with his scanner when he heard voices in the hallway. Tom's voice. He was back early. Thomas's mind raced. He couldn't be found here. Not with his phone full of incriminating photos. Just going to grab some notes for my study, Tom said to someone. Won't be a moment. Thomas did the only thing he could. He pretended to be checking the window locks, his scanner in hand looking completely natural. Tom walked in and stopped. Sergeant Reed. Twice in 1 week. Should I be worried about security? Thomas smiled calmly. Just following up on some readings from Monday's sweep, sir. All clear now. Excellent. Tom moved to his desk, but his eyes lingered on Thomas. Suspicious, calculating. I'll leave you to your work, sir. Thomas headed for the door. Sergeant. Tom's voice stopped him. Thomas turned. Sir, you've been with Palace Security for quite some time, haven't you? 3 years at Clarence House, sir. 7 years total with royal protection. And you're loyal to the family? To the institution. The question hung in the air. It sounded casual, but Thomas heard the weight behind it. Completely loyal, sir. Tom smiled. Good. Loyalty is so important these days. You never know who you can trust. 8. He paused. Or who might be working against the family's best interests. Thomas felt ice in his veins. Was Tom threatening him? Warning him? Or was this just conversation? Indeed, sir. Trust is everything. Tom's smile didn't reach his eyes. That it is, Sergeant. That it is. Thomas left the study, his pulse pounding. That interaction wasn't random. Tom suspected something. Maybe not everything, but something. Thomas had to be more careful. Much more careful. He waited until his shift ended, then drove to a location far from any royal properties. A quiet cafe where no one knew him. He transferred all the photos to an encrypted cloud storage. Then he sent one message to a secure email address he'd set up that morning. The recipient was someone he'd served with years ago. Someone who now worked in investigative journalism. Someone he trusted. The message was simple. Need advice on sensitive matter? Can we meet? The response came within an hour. Tomorrow? 6 p.m. You know where? Thomas deleted the messages and sat back. He'd just committed himself to this path. There was no going back now. That night, he couldn't sleep. He kept thinking about Tom's words. About loyalty. About trust. And he kept thinking about William. The prince who had no idea that people close to him were plotting his downfall. Should Thomas warn him? But how? He couldn't just walk up to the future king and say, "Your stepbrother is trying to destroy you." He needed more evidence. More proof. More pieces of the puzzle. At 2 in the morning, Thomas's phone buzzed. A text from Palace Security. Scheduling change. You're assigned to Williams's detail tomorrow. Africa tour preparation meeting at Kensington Palace. 9 a.m. Thomas stared at the message. This was perfect. He'd be close to William. Could observe. Could potentially warn him if the moment was right. But it was also dangerous. If Tom and his associates found out Thomas was getting close to William, They might accelerate their plans, or they might eliminate the threat Thomas represented. He thought about that folder, about the careful planning, about the money being spent. This wasn't amateur hour. These people were serious, professional, and if they were willing to spend hundreds of thousands of pounds to undermine William, what else were they willing to do? Thomas had uncovered something bigger than he'd imagined. This wasn't just Tom Parker Bowles working alone. This was organized, funded, strategic. Someone with real power was behind this. Someone who stood to gain from William's fall. The question was still the same. Was Camilla involved? Or was her son acting independently? Maybe trying to secure his mother's legacy? Or elevate his own position? Thomas needed answers. And tomorrow, at Kensington Palace, he might start getting them. He finally fell asleep around 4, his dreams filled with conspiracies and shadows. When his alarm went off 3 hours later, Thomas got up and put on his uniform. He looked at himself in the mirror. He was about to walk into the lion's den, about to be in the same room as the man who was being targeted, unable to speak freely, unable to warn him, but he could watch. He could listen. He could gather more information. Thomas grabbed his keys and headed out. His meeting with his journalist friend was 12 hours away. Until then, he had to play his role perfectly. Loyal guard, seeing nothing, knowing nothing. But inside, Thomas was already planning his next move. The game had become more dangerous, but he wasn't backing down. William needed protection, whether he knew it or not, and Thomas was going to provide it, no matter what it took. Asterisk, Kensington Palace. Felt different that morning. Thomas arrived early and took his position outside the conference room where William's Africa tour meeting would take place. Other guards nodded to him. Staff rushed past with documents and coffee. Everything looked normal, but Thomas knew better now. Beneath the surface of palace life, plots were unfolding. Prince William arrived at exactly 9 o'clock. He looked tired, stressed, the weight of upcoming responsibilities visible on his face. Thomas bowed his head as William passed. The prince barely glanced at him. Why would he? Thomas was just another guard. Just part of the scenery, if only William knew. If only he understood that the man standing silently by the door had seen the plans to destroy him. The meeting began. Through the closed door, Thomas could hear muffled voices. Discussions about logistics, security concerns, media strategy. Then a new voice joined them. One Thomas recognized immediately. Tom Parker Bowles. Thomas's hand instinctively moved to his radio. What was Tom doing here? He had no official role in William's tour. No reason to be at this meeting unless this was Phase 2 beginning. Unless Tom was here to plant seeds of doubt? To subtly undermine William's confidence? Thomas couldn't hear the specific words, but he could hear the tone. Friendly, helpful, concerned. The meeting lasted 90 minutes. When the door finally opened, William emerged, looking even more stressed than before. Tom followed, chatting pleasantly with one of William's advisors. He saw Thomas and smiled. That same pleasant smile, but now Thomas saw it differently. Saw the calculation behind it. Sergeant Reed, excellent security as always. Tom's voice was warm. Thank you, sir. Tom lowered his voice slightly. I hope you've recovered from your scare the other day. You seemed quite shaken when I found you in my study. Thomas's heart stopped. No scare, sir. Just doing my job, of course. Tom's eyes held his for a moment too long. Still, one never knows what one might encounter during a security sweep. Sometimes you see things that aren't meant for your eyes. That can be uncomfortable. The threat was clear. Tom knew. Maybe not everything, but he knew Thomas had seen something. I only ever see security concerns, sir. Nothing else registers. Tom smiled wider. I'm very glad to hear that. Very glad indeed. Discretion is so important in your line of work. Asterisk, he walked away, leaving Thomas cold despite the warm morning. That evening, Thomas met his journalist friend, Marcus Chen, at a small pub in South London. Far from royal circles, far from prying eyes, Marcus had been an investigative reporter for 20 years. He'd broken corruption scandals, exposed criminal networks, and navigated dangerous waters. If anyone could help Thomas, it was him. They sat in a corner booth. Thomas showed Marcus the photographs on his phone. Marcus's face grew grave as he scrolled through them. Christ, Tom, do you know what you've stumbled into? A plot to undermine Prince William by Camilla's son. It's bigger than that. Marcus zoomed in on one of the financial documents. These PR firms, I know them. They're the best in the business. They don't work cheap, and they don't work for just anyone. Who do they work for? People with serious money and serious agendas, political operatives, corporations trying to change public opinion, sometimes foreign governments. Thomas felt sick. Are you saying this could be foreign interference? I'm saying someone is spending a fortune to make William look bad, and whoever it is has connections to some very powerful people. Marcus set the phone down. The question is why? What do they gain from weakening William? Thomas had been wondering the same thing. Tom Parker Bowles isn't in line for the throne. Neither is Camilla's daughter. So what's the endgame? Maybe it's not about putting someone else on the throne. Maybe it's about controlling who does sit there. King Charles? Okay. Charles is elderly. His health isn't what it used to be. If William is seen as unfit or unstable, and Charles becomes incapacitated, who fills the void? Who becomes the trusted advisor? The power behind the throne. Camilla, Thomas whispered. Or her children. Or all of them together. Marcus leaned forward. Think about it. If William is damaged enough, but Charles is still king, who does Charles turn to? His wife. And through her, her family gains unprecedented influence. Thomas's mind reeled. But that would require Charles to be diminished somehow. Not fully capable. He's 75 years old, Marcus said quietly. How much longer does he have at full capacity? 5 years? 10? And in that time, if William is undermined enough, if public confidence in him drops enough, the transition of power becomes complicated. Thomas thought about the documents, about Operation New Foundation, about the alternative center of influence. They're not trying to stop William from being king eventually, Thomas said slowly. They're trying to make sure he's weak when he gets there. Weak enough that he needs them. Depends on them. Now you're thinking like a conspirator. Marcus pulled out his own phone. I need to make some calls. See what my contacts know about these PR firms? About who's been spending money on anti-William messaging. Marcus, you can't publish any of this. Not yet, I know. But I can investigate quietly, and I can help you build a real case. Marcus looked at him seriously. Tom, what you've found is explosive. But it's also incomplete. You need more. You need to connect Tom Parker Bowles directly to Camilla. You need to prove she knows what's happening. How? You need to catch them together. Discussing the plan? Or you need documentation that shows her involvement. Or you need someone on the inside to flip. Someone who will testify about what's really happening. Thomas thought about the palace staff. About the advisors and consultants. Someone had to know more. Someone had to be uncomfortable with what was happening. There might be someone, Thomas said slowly. One of William's advisors seemed tense when Tom was talking today. Like he didn't want to be there. Then you need to approach him. Carefully. Feel him out. And if I'm wrong? If he's part of it. Marcus's face was grim. Then you've exposed yourself. And this whole thing gets much more dangerous. They talked for another hour, planning Thomas's next steps. When they finally parted ways, Thomas felt the full weight of what he was doing. He was investigating the Queen Consort's family. He was gathering evidence against people with enormous power and resources. If he was wrong, or if he got caught before he had enough proof, his life would be destroyed. But if he was right, and he did nothing, William's future would be destroyed instead. That night, Thomas lay in bed thinking about duty, about loyalty, about the oath he'd sworn to protect the royal family. That oath hadn't specified which members to protect. It hadn't said protect the king but not the prince. It hadn't said protect the institution, even if it means sacrificing individuals. It had just said protect the royal family. And right now, William needed protection more than anyone. The next morning, Thomas returned to his normal duties at Clarence's house. He was hyper-aware now, watching everyone, looking for signs, searching for patterns. He noticed things he'd missed before. Meetings between Tom and certain palace officials, phone calls taken in private, documents being shredded immediately after being read. The conspiracy was right in front of him, operating in plain sight, hidden only by smiles and pleasant conversation. 3 days after his meeting with Marcus, Thomas's opportunity came. He overheard 2 staff members talking in hushed tones. One of them mentioned a gathering at Camilla's private residence that evening. Family meeting, they called it. Very private. Thomas's instinct screamed at him. This was it. This was where the real decisions were made. But he couldn't get in. Couldn't listen. Couldn't observe. Unless he found a way. That afternoon, Thomas volunteered for extra overtime. Offered to handle security for the evening. His supervisor was grateful for the help. By 7 p.m., Thomas was positioned outside Camilla's private quarters. His official duty was perimeter security. But his real mission was intelligence gathering. At 8 p.m., they arrived. Tom Parker Bowles, his sister, Laura Lopes, several people Thomas didn't recognize, all entering Camilla's residence. And then, at 8:30, something Thomas hadn't expected. A black car pulled up. A woman stepped out, mid-40s, professional, carrying a briefcase. Thomas recognized her from the financial documents. One of the PR consultants who'd been paid hundreds of thousands of pounds. This wasn't a family dinner. This was a strategy meeting. Thomas's radio crackled. Reed, need you at the east entrance. Possible security concern. Thomas's stomach dropped. He couldn't leave his post. Not now. Not when the meeting was happening. But he had no choice. He was being pulled away deliberately. As he left his position, he glanced back at Camilla's residence. Lights glowed in the upper windows. Inside, decisions were being made. Plans were being finalized. And Thomas was being removed from witnessing any of it. This wasn't coincidence. Someone knew he was watching. Someone knew he was a threat. And they were taking steps to neutralize him. The security concern at the east entrance was nothing. A false alarm. A bag left unattended that turned out to belong to a gardener. But it had done its job. Thomas had been moved away from Camilla's residence at the exact moment the meeting was happening. When he returned to his post 40 minutes later, the cars were gone. The meeting had ended. Whatever had been discussed was now locked in the minds of the conspirators. Thomas felt frustration boiling inside him. He'd been so close. The next morning, Thomas was called to his supervisor's office. Commander Patricia Hewitt sat behind her desk, her expression unreadable. Sergeant Reed, sit down. As Thomas sat, his instincts on high alert. I've received a complaint about you, Patricia said. From Tom Parker Bowles. Thomas's blood ran cold. A complaint, ma'am? He says, you've been acting strangely. Lingering in areas outside your assigned duties. Asking unusual questions of staff members. Patricia's eyes were hard. He's concerned you might be experiencing stress. Burnout. The setup was perfect. Reframe Thomas's investigation as mental instability. Discredit him before he could expose anything. Ma'am, I've simply been thorough in my duties. Thomas suggested you might benefit from a leave of absence. Time to rest. Decompress. Patricia leaned forward. I'm inclined to agree. I don't need leave, ma'am. That's not really your decision. Patricia pulled out a form. Mandatory stress evaluation. You'll see the palace psychologist tomorrow. Depending on their assessment, you may be placed on temporary leave. Thomas understood. They were removing him from his position. Taking away his access. Silencing him. And if I refuse, then you'll be dismissed for insubordination. Patricia's voice softened slightly. Tom, you've been a good guard. Loyal, reliable. Don't throw away your career over whatever's bothering you. She thought she was being kind. I thought she was helping him. She had no idea she was being used. Thomas left the office knowing his time was running out. Once he was on leave, he'd lose access to the palace, lose his ability to gather evidence. The conspiracy would continue unchecked. He had one option left. One person who might listen. One person with the power to do something, Prince William. But approaching William directly was dangerous. Protocol demanded he go through proper channels. And those channels were clearly compromised. Thomas called Marcus. I need to get a message to Prince William, privately, without going through palace staff. It's nearly impossible. He's one of the most protected people in the world. There has to be a way. Marcus was quiet for a moment. There might be. I know someone who works with William's charitable foundation. Not palace staff. Independent contractor. She might be willing to pass a message. Can you trust her? With my life? But Tom, if you do this, there's no going back. You're essentially going over everyone's heads, violating every protocol. Your career is finished either way. My career is already finished. At least this way, William might be protected. Thomas met Marcus's contact the next evening. Her name was Rachel Davies. She was an event coordinator for William's Earthshot Prize Foundation. She'd worked with the prince for 2 years. Marcus says you have information Prince William needs to hear, Rachel said carefully. Information about threats to him. Yes. But I need you to deliver this message personally. Hand it directly to him, not through staff, not through advisors. Directly, Rachel studied him. If I do this, I'm risking my own position. I need to know what this is about. Thomas made a decision. He showed her some of the photographs on his phone. Not everything, but enough. Rachel's face went pale. Oh my God, is this real? Yes, and it's getting worse. They're trying to remove me before I can expose it. That's what Prince William needs to determine. But it involves people very close to his family. Rachel was quiet for a long moment. Then she nodded. I'm coordinating an event next week, private, small group. Prince William will be there. I can get a message to him then. That might be too late. It's the best I can do, unless you want to try approaching him at a public engagement, which would be noticed by everyone. Thomas knew she was right, okay? Next week. But the message has to be clear. He's in danger. People are plotting against him. And he can't trust everyone around him, I'll tell him. Thomas went home that night feeling like he'd lit a fuse. In less than a week, everything would explode. But the next morning, everything accelerated. Thomas arrived at work to find his security clearance had been suspended. Pending psychological evaluation, they told him. He was escorted to the palace medical office immediately. The psychologist was professional, thorough. She asked about stress, about sleep patterns, about any unusual thoughts or concerns. Thomas played it carefully, admitted to some stress, said he'd been working long hours, but denied any mental health crisis. The psychologist took notes. I'm recommending 2 weeks of mandatory leave, with counseling sessions. After that, we'll reassess your fitness for duty. 2 weeks. In 2 weeks, phase 2 of the conspiracy would be well underway. William's Africa tours would be happening. The coordinated media attacks would be launched. And Thomas would be sitting at home, helpless to stop any of it. He left the medical office in a daze. His phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Stop digging. This is your only warning. Thomas stared at the message. They were threatening him openly now, which meant they felt confident, felt protected, or they were getting desperate. Thomas made his decision. He couldn't wait for Rachel to deliver the message next week. He had to act now. That afternoon, he found out William was visiting a youth charity in East London. Public event. Lots of press. Heavy security. Thomas wasn't assigned to that detail. Wasn't supposed to be anywhere near it, but he went anyway. He arrived at the charity just as William's motorcade pulled up. Security was tight. Guards everywhere. Pressed behind barriers. Thomas positioned himself where William would have to pass. He had seconds, maybe less. William stepped out of the car, smiled, waved to the crowd, started walking toward the building entrance. Thomas moved forward. Another guard immediately stepped in his way. Sergeant Reed. What are you doing here? Need to speak with Prince William. It's urgent. You're not on this detail. You need to leave. William was getting closer. Thomas's window was closing. Your Royal Highness? Thomas called out. William stopped, looked over, confused. Security closed in on Thomas immediately. 2 guards grabbed his arms. "Sir, I need 30 seconds. Please, it's about your safety." William's expression changed, concerned now. He walked closer, despite his security team's protests. "Sergeant Reed, isn't it? From Clarence House?" "Sir, I have information about people trying to undermine you, people close to your family." William's face went still. The crowd around them grew quiet. Press cameras were clicking frantically, and this was going to be headlines within minutes. Thomas had just made a scene in front of dozens of witnesses, but it was too late to stop now. "Sir, there's a plot. Documents, payments to media firms, photographs of you being used to make you look unstable. It's being coordinated by That's Enough." A voice cut in. Commander Hewitt had arrived. "Sergeant Reed is on medical leave. He's experiencing stress-related delusions." "They're not delusions." Thomas struggled against the guards holding him. "Sir, I have proof. Photographs of documents, financial records, it's all real." William looked at Commander Hewitt, then back at Thomas. His face was unreadable. "Where is this proof?" William asked quietly. "On my phone, encrypted storage. I can show you everything." "Sir, I strongly advise against encouraging this behavior," Hewitt said. "Sergeant Reed is unwell. He needs help, not validation." William studied Thomas for a long moment. The crowd watched. The cameras recorded. Then William made a decision. "I'll see the evidence. In private, now." Hewitt's face went rigid. "Your Royal Highness, this is highly irregular, Commander. I've just been told there's a plot against me. I'd like to see what evidence exists before dismissing it as delusion." William's voice had steel in it. "Sergeant Reed, you'll come with me? Bring your phone." He turned to his protection officers. "Clear a room now. No one else present except myself and Sergeant Reed." The guards looked at each other uncertainly. But when William gave an order, you followed it. 5 minutes later, Thomas sat across from the future King of England in a small office at the Charity Building. William held Thomas's phone, scrolling through the photographs. His face grew darker with each image. "How long has this been going on?" William's voice was controlled. Thomas could hear the fury underneath. "I found the first documents 2 weeks ago. Based on what I've seen, this has been planned for months. Maybe longer." William looked up. His eyes were ice. "And you believe Tom Parker Bowles is behind this?" "I know he is, sir. I've seen the documents in his study. I've photographed them." "Who else is involved?" "I'm not certain. I believe it may go higher, sir." William understood immediately. "Camilla. I have no direct proof of her involvement, but the financial records suggest someone with significant resources is funding this." And there was a meeting at her residence. PR consultants attended. William set the phone down. His hands were shaking slightly. "My stepmother," he said quietly, "my father's wife. Plotting to destroy me before I even take the throne. Sir, I could be wrong about her direct involvement. You're not wrong." William's voice was hollow. "I felt it. For months. The distance. The cold politeness. The way she looks at me when she thinks no one's watching." He looked at Thomas. "I just didn't want to believe it." The room fell silent. Then William stood. His face had transformed. He was no longer the tired, stressed prince. Now he looked like a king. "Sergeant Reed, you've done something incredibly brave and incredibly stupid." A hint of a smile. "But mostly brave. Thank you. What will you do, sir?" William's smile disappeared. "I'm going to protect my family. And I'm going to make sure the people who tried to destroy me understand what happens when you betray a future king." He picked up his phone and made a call. "Father, it's William. We need to talk. Immediately. It's about Camilla." The emergency meeting at Windsor Castle happened that evening. Thomas wasn't present. He'd been taken to a secure location, his phone confiscated as evidence. His statement recorded by royal protection officers who finally believed him. But Marcus had contacts everywhere. And through those contacts, Thomas learned what happened in that room. King Charles had been devastated. William had shown him everything. The documents. The photographs. The financial records. The timeline of Operation New Foundation. Charles had aged 10 years and 10 minutes, according to the source. He'd sat in silence, staring at evidence that his wife's son had been systematically working to undermine his own son. Then Charles had called Camilla. She'd arrived within the hour. Tom Parker Bowles had been summoned as well. Both of them walked into that meeting expecting nothing unusual. They walked into an ambush. Charles had laid it all out. Every document, every photograph, every piece of evidence Thomas had gathered. Camilla had denied everything at first, called it a misunderstanding, a miscommunication. But Charles had the financial records. Payments from accounts linked to her personal wealth, transfers that couldn't be explained away. Did you know? Charles had asked his wife, "Did you know what your son was doing?" According to the source, Camilla had broken down, admitted that, yes, she'd known, but claimed it was just protective research. That Tom had been worried about negative press around William and was trying to prepare contingencies. William had exploded at that. Prepare contingencies? You were building a case to destroy my reputation. You were paying people to make me look unstable. Tom had tried to defend himself, claimed he'd been trying to protect the monarchy, that William was too emotional and not ready for the pressures of kingship. "Who are you?" William had said, his voice cold, "to decide if I'm ready to be king?" The meeting had lasted for hours. By the end, according to the source, Charles had made his decision. Tom Parker Bowles was banned from all royal properties. His access to palace information was severed. He was to have no contact with any working members of the royal family. Camilla was given a choice: divorce Charles and leave the royal family, or stay, but with drastically reduced influence. No more involvement in royal decisions. No more access to sensitive information. She would be queen consort, in name only. She had chosen to stay, but the cost was everything she'd spent decades building. The source told Marcus one more thing. Charles had been heartbroken. He'd loved Camilla for nearly 50 years, had fought the world to marry her, and now he discovered she'd been willing to sacrifice his son for her own family's gain. The betrayal had broken something in him. Thomas learned all this secondhand. Sitting in a safe house while royal lawyers decided what to do with him, he'd violated protocols, broken into a private safe, spied on members of the royal family. Technically, he could be charged with multiple crimes, but he'd also uncovered a genuine conspiracy, protected the future king. Done what his oath required, the lawyers were in a difficult position. 3 days after the confrontation at Windsor, Thomas was summoned to Kensington Palace. He was escorted to William's private office. The prince sat behind his desk, looking exhausted but composed. Sergeant Reed. "Sit, please." Thomas sat, his future uncertain. "I've spoken with the legal team," William said. "About your methods. About the laws you technically broke." "I understand, sir. I accept whatever consequences. You're being promoted." William cut him off. Thomas blinked. "Sir, promoted to my personal protection team. Directly under my command, with a significant pay increase and expanded duties." "I don't understand." William leaned forward. "You saved me, Thomas. Not from a physical threat, but from something potentially worse. From being undermined so thoroughly that by the time I became king, I'd be too damaged to lead effectively. I just did my duty, sir." "No, you went far beyond your duty. You risked everything because you believed it was right." William's voice was intense. "That kind of loyalty is rare. That kind of courage is invaluable. I need people like you close to me." Thomas felt emotion welling in his chest. "Thank you, sir. Thank my wife, actually. She's the one who suggested I keep you close. She said anyone brave enough to break into a safe to protect her husband deserves to be rewarded, not punished." "She's right. As usual, what about Commander Hewitt and the others who tried to silence me?" William's smile faded. "They've been reassigned. They weren't part of the conspiracy, but they allowed themselves to be used. That's almost as bad. I'm rebuilding my security team from scratch. People I can trust. People who've proven their loyalty. And Camilla, sir. Tom Williams' face hardened. Tom is gone. Permanently. As for Camilla, he sighed. My father is handling that situation. It's complicated, painful, but necessary. I'm sorry, sir. I know this must be. Don't apologize for exposing the truth. Ever William stood. The monarchy survives because people like you care enough to protect it, even when that means challenging the people within it. He extended his hand. Thomas stood and shook it. Welcome to the team, Sergeant Reed. Or should I say Lieutenant Reed. Your promotion comes with a rank increase. Thomas left Kensington Palace in a daze. He'd gone from facing dismissal to being promoted. From potential criminal to trusted advisor. Marcus met him at a pub that evening. His friend was grinning. You did it. You actually did it. I got lucky, Thomas said. Luck had nothing to do with it. You had courage. You had integrity. And you had the guts to stand up when it mattered. Marcus raised his glass. To the man who saved a future king. They drank, but Thomas couldn't shake a feeling of unease. What's wrong? Marcus asked. You won. The conspiracy is exposed. The plotters are punished. Did we win, though? Thomas set down his glass. Tom is banned, but he's not in jail. Camilla is diminished, but she's still queen consort. The PR firms that were paid to destroy William are still in business. What are you saying? I'm saying we stopped this conspiracy, but we didn't destroy the infrastructure that made it possible. The people, the resources, the willingness to use them. Marcus's smile faded. You think they'll try again? I think people who are willing to spend hundreds of thousands of pounds to undermine a prince won't just give up because they got caught once. Thomas leaned forward. We won the battle. But the war isn't over. Then what do you do? What I've been doing. Watch. Listen. Protect William from whatever comes next. Thomas's jaw set. Because something will come next. I'm certain of it. He was right. 2 weeks later, Thomas was reviewing security reports when he noticed something odd. A pattern of staff movements at Clarence House. People being reassigned. New hires with vague backgrounds. He flagged it for investigation. And what he found chilled him. Tom Parker Bowles might be banned from royal properties. But he still had friends in palace administration. Still had allies who hadn't been exposed. Asterisk. And they were quietly positioning themselves around William. New secretaries. New advisors. New staff members with no obvious connections to Tom or Camilla. But when Thomas dug deeper, he found the connections. Payments through shell companies. Recommendations from the same PR firms that had been involved in Operation New Foundation. The conspiracy hadn't been destroyed. It had just gone deeper underground. Thomas brought his findings to William immediately. The prince's face went dark as he reviewed the evidence. They're trying again. More carefully this time. Yes, sir. And they're better hidden now. They know we're watching. Asterisk William was quiet for a long moment. Then he made a decision. We're going to do something unprecedented. Something that will send a message. Sir, I'm going public. Not with all the details, but with enough. I'm going to announce that there was a plot against me. That it was discovered and stopped. That anyone attempting similar actions in the future will face the full consequences of the law. Thomas's eyes widened. Sir, that will cause a scandal. Questions about who was involved. Speculation about Camilla. Good. William's voice was steel. Let there be questions. Let there be speculation. Let everyone know that I'm not the naive, emotional prince they think I am. That I know when I'm being targeted. And that I will protect myself. Your father might not approve. My father has his own decisions to make about his wife. I have mine to make about my future. William looked at Thomas. Will you stand with me? When the storm hits, because it will hit hard. Thomas didn't hesitate. Always, sir. William smiled. Then let's prepare for war. The announcement came 3 days later, carefully worded. No names mentioned, but clear enough. Prince William wishes to thank those members of security who recently uncovered and prevented a coordinated effort to damage his reputation. While the matter has been resolved internally, the prince wants the public to know that such attempts will not be tolerated, and all future incidents will be dealt with through appropriate legal channels. The press exploded. Speculation ran wild. Who had plotted against William? What had they planned? Why wasn't more information being released? Camilla released a statement through her lawyers. The Queen Consort was shocked to learn of these events and fully supports all efforts to protect members of the royal family. But everyone could read between the lines. Everyone could see the separation between Camilla and William. The coldness. The distance. King Charles remained silent. Thomas watched it all unfold from his new position on William's protection team. He saw the prince handle the pressure with grace and strength, saw him refuse to be intimidated or silenced, and Thomas understood. William wasn't just protecting himself. He was sending a message to everyone who might think about trying something similar. The future king was not to be trifled with. The war Marcus had warned about was just beginning. But this time, William was ready, and Thomas would be right beside him. 6 months passed, the media frenzy around. William's announcement had eventually died down, replaced by other scandals, other stories, other royal dramas. But inside the palace walls, everything had changed. Thomas stood at his usual post outside William's office at Kensington Palace. His new uniform bore the insignia of his rank, Lieutenant Personal Protection Officer to the Prince of Wales. But more than that, he was William's trusted advisor, someone who had proven willing to risk everything for the truth. The office door opened. William emerged with Kate at his side. They were heading to an engagement at a veterans hospital. Standard appearance. Nothing unusual, except Thomas noticed everything now. Every face in the crowd, every new staff member, every deviation from routine. The conspiracy had taught him that danger didn't always come from outside. Sometimes it came from within. From smiling faces and friendly words, as they walked to the vehicle, William leaned close to Thomas. Anything I should know about today? All clear, sir. I've vetted everyone who'll be present. No concerns. William nodded, but Thomas saw the tension in his shoulders. The prince was different now. More guarded, more careful. The innocence he'd had before was gone. The conspiracy had stolen that from him. The hospital visit went smoothly. William was charming and engaged. Kate was graceful and warm. They were the perfect royal couple. But Thomas saw what the cameras didn't, the way William scanned faces, looking for threats. The way he positioned himself between Kate and unfamiliar people. The way he never fully relaxed. Operation New Foundation had failed in its immediate goals. But it had succeeded in making William paranoid, distrustful, isolated maybe. That had been the real goal all along. That evening, Thomas received an unexpected call, a number he didn't recognize. Lieutenant Reed. A woman's voice. Educated, cautious. Yes, who is this? My name is Patricia Harlow. I work for Queen Camilla. Or I did until yesterday. Thomas's pulse quickened. What can I do for you, Miss Harlow? I need to speak with you. In person. About something you should know. Something about what really happened with the conspiracy? I know what happened. I uncovered it. You know what they let you uncover? Patricia's voice was urgent. Please, meet me. 1 hour. There's a coffee shop near Kensington Gardens. I'll be at the back table. She hung up before Thomas could respond. This could be a trap. Another attempt to discredit him or harm William. But it could also be genuine. A former insider willing to talk, Thomas made a decision. He called Marcus first, gave him the location. If I don't check in within 2 hours, something's wrong. Then he went to the meeting. Patricia Harlow was exactly what she'd sounded. Like mid-50s, professional, nervous. She had the look of someone who'd spent decades navigating palace politics. Thank you for coming, she said as Thomas sat down. I wasn't sure you would, I almost didn't. Me one reason why I should trust you. Patricia pulled out a folder. A plain brown one, like the folder Thomas had found in Tom's study all those months ago. Because I have proof that what you stopped was only the beginning. And because I don't want to be complicit in what comes next. Thomas opened the folder. His blood ran cold. Inside were documents dated after William's public announcement. After Tom's banishment, after Camilla's diminishment, new plans. New strategies. New targets. Operation New Foundation didn't end, Patricia said quietly. It evolved. Thomas read through the documents. His hands began to shake. The new target wasn't just William. It was his children, George, Charlotte, and Louis. They're planning to shape public perception of the children, Patricia explained. Make George seem unstable. Make the public question whether he's fit to be king someday. Create doubt about the entire line of succession. Why would Camilla want this? Her grandchildren, through Charles, aren't in line for the throne, Patricia interrupted. Her biological grandchildren will never be king or queen. But if she can undermine William's children, if she can create enough doubt about them, then maybe the succession gets complicated. Maybe the rules get changed. It's insane. The succession is law. You can if the public demands it. If there's enough scandal, enough concern, if people genuinely believe the future monarch is unfit, Patricia leaned forward. That's what they're planning. A decades-long campaign to destroy the next generation before they even have a chance.
Oh.
Thomas felt sick. Who else knows about this? Very few. Tom is running it from a distance. He's learned from his mistakes. This time, everything is more careful, more compartmentalized. Harder to trace back to him and Camilla. Patricia's face was pained. She claims she doesn't know the details. Claims Tom is acting independently. But she's funding it. Through layers of shell companies and trusts, but it's her money. She knows. Why are you telling me this? Why betray her? Because I have grandchildren too, Patricia said, her voice breaking. And the thought of someone doing this to them, to any children, is monstrous. I've enabled a lot of questionable things in my career. But I won't enable this. Thomas took the folder. I need to show this to Prince William immediately. Wait. Teresa grabbed his arm. There's something else. Something you need to understand? Asterisk what? King Charles knows. Thomas froze. What? He knows what his wife is planning, what his stepson is doing, and he's chosen to do nothing. He's too old, too tired, too heartbroken to fight anymore. Patricia's eyes filled with tears. He loves Camilla too much to stop her. Even knowing what she's doing to his grandchildren, the betrayal was complete. Not just from Camilla and Tom, but from Charles himself. He's protecting her, Thomas whispered, even knowing she's trying to destroy his own family line. Love makes people do terrible things, or in this case, fail to do necessary things.